If you have ever come across a website that made you think that, hey, this website is really cool, interactive and responsive as well, JavaScript probably made it happen. And it's not only used for websites, it extends that to creation of desktop apps, mobile apps by creating a framework such as React, Angular, Vue, Nest, and many more. In today's episode, I'll be teaching you the basics you need to get started with JavaScript before you can proceed with React. And that will be very helpful as well. So let's first of all talk about variables. You can think of variables as a container for storing data values. And there are three ways of declaring variables. You have the var, the let, and the const. Whenever you use the var in declaring variables, it means this variable can be reassigned a different value within the scope in which it is defined or globally. Unlike the let keyword, which can be reassigned only in the scope it is defined. The const keyword, as the name suggests, constant. Whenever you declare a variable with the const keyword, it can't be reassigned. And that's pretty much the three ways of declaring a variable. Let's move on to how to comment out a code in JavaScript. Whenever you comment out a code in JavaScript, that code is not going to be executed. Well, you might be thinking, then what's the essence of the comment? It's really a good idea to comment your code to make it more readable. You have a single line comment and also a multiple line comment whenever you are commenting the code. But the single line comment, we start with 2 forward slashes, and that line of code will be treated as a comment and it will be executed by the browser. With a multiple line comment, it starts with a forward slash and an asterisk, and also ends with an asterisk and also a forward slash. So within that, whatever will be written there will be treated as a multiple line comment, and that's the way out in commenting, of course. So let's proceed with the data types in JavaScript. Data types basically means the types of data or values a program can work with. We have different types of data types in JavaScript. We have the data type being a number, string, decimal, or boolean. When we think a data type being a number, it means a data type is going to be an integer. That's whether positive or negative. A string data type just taking a string of text or any text that is wrapped in quotes. Data type being a decimal, taking decimal values. The boolean type just taking two values, and that can be either true or false, yes or no, or on or off. For example, Let's move on with the conditional statement. Much often, whenever you write code, we want to compare certain actions based on conditions. And that's when the conditional statement comes in. So we have the if statement. And this is how the syntax goes. So if, then we have a pair of parentheses and also a pair of curly braces. So within the parentheses, that's when the condition goes. And within the curly braces, that's where the action goes. So for example, let's declare a variable and assign a value to it, and also declare another variable and assign a different value to it. So we're going to perform a certain action based on the condition. So if A is less than B, we want to console out, yes, indeed, A is less than B. So when we check the console, we can see, A is indeed less than B. So what if something else happens and we have A being greater than B? And this is when I will introduce you to the else statement. The else statement is going to be executed whenever the condition is false. And also, what if we want to specify more than one condition? And this leads to the else if statement. So this is how the syntax goes. So if A is less than B, you console the log, indeed A is less than B. Else if, then you specify another condition, then you perform an action there. So after perform the else if statement, we then end it up with else. So if none of the conditions satisfied, the code within the else will get executed. And also, what if you have a bunch of else if statements? And that's when the switch statement comes in. And this is how the syntax goes. So with the switch keyword, we have a pair of parentheses and also curly braces. So within the parentheses, we'll be switching based on a key. So we've declared a variable day and assigned a value to it. So we'll be switching based on the variable. So when we switch the variable within the curly braces, that's where our action goes. We'll do it based on cases. So in the case of 1, if 1 is assigned to the day, that's the action it should perform. Then, if it finds out to be true, we use the break keyword to end it. So it will look through the cases and find the one is satisfied. When it looks through the cases, we'll be having the third one, the case 3, as the right one. So you see on the console, this is day 3, and break it. So let's try it out. There we go. We can see this is day 3. We have it here. Let's move on with loops in JavaScript. JavaScript has 3 types of loops. We have the for loop, the while loop, and the do while loop. Loops basically runs a block of code number of times. Let's start with the for loop. So with the for loop, this is how the syntax goes. So we have for keyword and also a pair of parentheses and a pair of curly braces. So within the curly braces, that's where the action goes. So the first statement always initializes a variable before it starts looping. And the second statement sets a condition based on the variable. And the last statement either increase or decrease each time the block of code has been executed. So when we try to log out the variable I, we can see we have the numbers 1 to 5 being executed. And this is how the for loop works. It will first of all check if 1 is less than 5. And if it finds that to be true, it will increase the value of 1 to 2. So the initial value of I is now 2. It will move ahead and check if 2 is less than 5. And that's true. It will increase by 1 and move on to 3. So each time it will be executing. It will proceed with 3. 3 is indeed less than 5. It will increase by 1 until it reaches 5. And 5 is not less than 5. Then it will end there. And that's how the for loop works. Let's move on with the next type of loop, and that's the while loop. And this is how the syntax goes. So with the while keyword, we have a pair of parentheses where we specify a condition, and also a pair of curly braces where our action goes. So let's try an example out. So let's declare a variable and assign a value to it. So with the while keyword, within the condition, let's specify a condition. If I is less than 10, let's perform an action. For now, let's just log out the variable I. After logging out the variable I, let's try to increase the variable I by 1. So this is how it's going to perform. It will first of all check if 0 is less than 10, and indeed 0 is less than 10. It will move ahead to log out 0, and after logging out 0, it will increase the value of 0 and add 1 to it. So we'll be having a variable I to be 1, and we'll check again if 1 is less than 10. Indeed 1 is less than 10. It will log out 1, increase 1 by 1. So we'll be having our variable I to be now 2, and we'll check again if 2 is less than 10. So it will proceed until it reaches 10, and 10 is not less than 10. So it will end at 10, and that's how the while loop performs or works. So when we try to check it out on the console, we can see we have 0 to 9, and it ends at 9 because 10 is not less than 10. It will move ahead to log out the variable 10. Let's proceed with the last loop, and that's the do while loop. So with the do while loop, it will first of all perform the action before it checks the condition, and this is how the syntax goes. So do, and the action comes, and the while keyword with a pair of parentheses, and ends with a semicolon. So that's the syntax of the do while loop. Let's try an example out. Let's declare a variable I and assign a value to it, which is 0. So within the do, that's where our action goes. So let's first of all log out the variable I, and after logging out the variable I, let's increase the variable I by 1. So this is how it's going to perform. It will first of all perform the action. It will first of all log out 0, and after logging out 0, it will add 1 to 0. So we have the variable I to be 1, and check if 1 is less than 10, and indeed 1 is less than 10. It will do again by logging out 1, and add 1 to 1. So we'll be having I to be 2. It will check if 2 is less than 10. Then it will proceed until it reaches 10. And 10 is not less than 10. So it will end at 9. So when we try to log it out, you can see we have the variable 0 to 9. And that's how the do while loop performs. Let's move on with functions in JavaScript. If you are with me at this stage, then it means you've really made a great progress. Let's proceed. You can think of a function as a block of code that performs a particular task. And one advantage of creating a function is that it can be reused over and over again. So in JavaScript, this is how we create a user-defined function. So with the function keyword, followed by your function name, and a pair of parentheses, and also a pair of curly braces. That's where our task goes, or the action goes. So let's try an example out. So in here, I have my function keyword and name the function as my function. So within the curly braces, let's just log out some statement to actually see that our function is really working. So let's just console.log, this is my function, and it works. And to actually call your function, you need to type in the name of your function followed by a pair of parentheses and end it with a semicolon. Just like that. When we try to check it out on the console, you can see this is my function and it works. This function can be reused over and over again. So when I try to copy it 3 more times and paste it and save in the changes and try to check it out on the console, you can see this is my function and it works, being on the console 4 more times. And that's the advantage of creating your own function. Let's move on with function with parameters. It follows the same pattern, but within the parentheses, that's where your parameters goes. So let's try an example out. The parameter I've passed within my function is name, and the task is going to perform is just logging out hello and add the name. So to actually call this function, so I'll call out my function, and since it receives a parameter, we just pass in the parameter. So I'll pass in John, and when we try to check it out on the console, we can see hello John. So let's try a simple program out that's sum 2 values. So within our parentheses, we'll be having 2 parameters, that's s and y. So within the function, let's just log out s plus y, and calling our function sum, we just pass in 2 values. It will get calculated. So let's try to check it out on the console. I name my function as sum, and it's meaningful to what we are doing. Since we are summing up 2 values, it's good to name the function based on what we are doing. So the sum is not a built-in function. It's a user-defined function I just created right in. Let's move on with operators in JavaScript. Let's begin with arithmetic operators in JavaScript. Operations such as addition, division, multiplication, subtraction, and also finding of modulus of a number can be performed in JavaScript. So let's try an example out. Let's try to find out the sum of 2 numbers, 8 and 7 for example. And also when you try to check it up on the console, you can see we have 15. It works the same way when we try to divide 2 numbers, subtract 1 from the other, and also multiply 1 by the other. We can sum up 2 numbers and assign it to a variable and just print out the variable. So let's try that one too. Let's move on with the assignment operators in JavaScript. The assignment operator basically shortens the procedure in performing calculations. So in here, I've declared a variable x and assigned 10 to it. So I want to add a 5 to 10. So this is how the assignment operator works. Since I'm adding, I'll use the plus sign followed by the equal to. This means it will take 5 and add to x. When I want to subtract 5 from x, I'll just, in place of the addition sign, I'll put subtraction sign. It works the same way as the division and multiplication, and that's how the assignment operator works. So let's try to check this out on the console. There we go. Let's move on with the increment and decrement operator. The increment operator simply increases its value by 1, unlike the decrement operator which decreases its value by 1. So let's try an example out. So I have a variable x and assign a value 1 to it. So to increase this 1 by 1, I could just do x equals x plus 1. And in shortened form, we use the increment operator, which is x plus plus, and it increases its value by 1. So when we try to check this out on the console, we can see the value 2 on the console. And it works the same way as decrement. So to decrease this, we just do x minus minus. And this increment and decrement calculations works in two ways, and that's the prefix and the postfix. When we talk of the prefix, the difference is that it just increases its value before performing the calculation, unlike the postfix which just perform the calculation before increasing its value. So we can have something like x plus plus and also plus plus x. The plus plus x just increases its value by 1, and if there is any calculation, it just perform. Unlike the x plus plus, which just perform any calculation and checks before it increases. The same way applies to the decrement. We could have minus minus x and also x minus minus. Comparing certain things before performing an action is quite useful, and that's when the comparison statement comes in. So in have declared variable num and assign 4 to it. So I want to check if my number is equal to 10. I'll log out yes, otherwise I'll log out no. So the two equal sign operator checks the two operands, and if they are the same, return either true or false. So when we check it out on the console, you can see we have no, and indeed 4 is not equal to 10, so we are expecting no. We can also talk of the not equal sign, which checks if the two operands are not equal. So we have the not and the equal sign. And when we also try to check with the same example on the console, we can see we will be getting the yes as the answer, since 4 is not equal to 10. We can also talk about the less than sign, the greater than sign, the less than or equal to sign, and also the greater than or equal to sign. So we can try an example with it. Let's move on with logical operators. You can think of logical operators as a Boolean operator which returns a value of either true or false. So we have the AND operator, and it's being represented by 2 ampersand sign. You also have the OR operator and also the NOT operator. The AND operator returns true if both of its operands are true, unlike the OR operator which returns true if one of its operands is true. And the NOT operator simply returns the negation of either true or false. So if it is true, the NOT operator will turn it to false. So it sounds quite confusing. No worry, let's try an example out. So these are the operands, and we have the AND operator here. So it will first of all check if 5 is greater than 4 and it's true, 10 is less than 20 is true. So if both operands are true, the final results will be true, and if it happens otherwise, we'll be having false. So let's change the operator to OR operator. The OR operator works in a way that if it finds one of its operands to be true, it will return that true. So if it finds the first operand to be true and the last operand to be false, it will return true. That's how the OR operator works. The NOT operator simply returns the negation of a decision, and that's how the NOT operator works. Okay, I can see this video is getting quite long, so we'll continue in the next part of this video. Until then, stay tuned. Don't forget to leave a like and also subscribe as well. See you in the next part of this video.